How's everyone rebounding from the week you had last week?
Good. We took Saturday off, obviously, coming off of 2 days in a row of really hard-fought games in Las Vegas. And then have had really two what I would call very good practices, both on Sunday and yesterday. And obviously we're hard at it again here today. Texas Southern is a very good team. Anytime that you win 4 road games, it says a lot about who you are. I don't care where those games are played at. It's not easy to travel. It's not easy to play on someone else's home gym, especially at the brink of the start of things, where everybody has energy and everybody has a lot to play for. So we're familiar with them because we played against them 2 years ago in the NCAA tournament. I think they're a team this year. I'm sure they feel this way, that has every reason to feel that they'll be in this year's NCAA tournament field. They have an outstanding backcourt. They have one of the best athletes that I've seen, Griffin, who plays the 5 or the 4 for them, whatever you consider him. But he played with the Harrison twins years ago on the summer circuit, which I think was one of the best college football recruits and then players during his time, and he's transferred from Texas A&M to Texas Southern. But looking at his offensive rebounding, I've never seen that many offensive rebounds on a stat sheet through 6 games. He's leading the nation, and he's shooting 77% from the field on top of that. And you combine that with just a 3-point shooting, a backcourt that I think is a high major backcourt that can be a backcourt in our Pac-12 conference. We have to be ready to go, and I fully expect one heck of a battle.
What stood out most to you 2 years ago in Portland facing Mike Davis and Texas Southern?
Well, they're a very well-coached team. Mike's been around. He's been in a Final Four himself as a head coach at Indiana. He's coached in the Big Ten Conference, was a great player himself, an assistant coach before that. Did an outstanding job at UAB, and now he's doing an outstanding job at Texas Southern. So he knows what to do. He recruits very talented kids. A lot of them are older because they've been at a 4-year institution or maybe a junior college prior to going to Texas Southern. And they play with tremendous discipline and poise, and they have purpose to what they do. Offensively, his players are in the right places on the court. They have great spacing, and this year, if you think about those 3 players that I had mentioned, and by the way, they have a number of others who are very good, but when you have a front court player who's leading the nation in offensive rebounds, shooting 77% from the field, and a backcourt that, scores 35 to 40 points per game, you're that team that nobody wants to play. When we played Texas Southern 2 years ago, I just happened earlier in that season watching the Michigan State-Texas Southern game around Christmas, and that really got my attention because that game, Texas Southern went to Michigan State and won. And really, they've not stopped. They're the team every November and December that plays everybody tough, that beats somebody that gets the nation's attention. And then, they move through their conference season in their conference tournament, and they end with, 20 wins, or they're that team you're going to face in the first round of a tournament, postseason tournament. So it's a tournament team. Butler was a tournament team. And so, learning from that game, learning from our recent experience, I hope that's beneficial to us tomorrow night.
What's the plan going forward with the ball screens for Lauri Markkanen? It looked like he picked up a couple of ticky-tack or fouls there early on. Can you still do those ball screens?
You talking about when we have the ball or when they have the ball?
They've got the ball, and Lauri comes out. I'm using the wrong term. Maybe
No, you're right.
He comes out, and they called a
hedge. Yep.
What's it called?
A hedge. Yep.
A hedge.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah. That's a great question. Who gave you that question to ask? Yeah. Yeah. No, serious. It was good. Yeah.
Well, no,
very good.
I mean,
Yeah.
It's just, a lot of us had to go back and forth between the basketball and the football games. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it looked like
No. It's a very, very good question, and something I have great regret about. When a team sets ball screens, on-ball screening, and it's more a part of our game now than ever. In the NBA, I don't know if you can watch one possession in an NBA game where there's not going to be one on-ball screen. And just a few years ago, if there were more than one set, it would be odd. Now, I would say most possessions involve multiple, and sometimes 3 or 4. Against Butler, for example, because of their style, they may set as many as 5, 4 in one possession. They're patient. They move the ball. They're very experienced. And, Lowry, we had no choice. He's going to guard in that game a very experienced player and a very important player to Butler's success. And, oftentimes is the case for the youngest players on your team, we prepare our guys in practice. And in this case, we had a very quick turnaround. So we tried to prepare as best we could, our entire team, but especially our front court, on the importance of when you do hedge a ball screen to be early, responsible, recognize the importance of not fouling. And if for whatever reason you don't get there or you feel like you're late, then don't hedge. Just stop the ball. That's our philosophy. Well, as a young player, you're eager to do things right, and the right move is to get there early and to hedge. A number of times, and this is to Butler's credit, it's also not Lowry's fault at all. This was the 6th game of his college career. He wanted to do things the right way, and in his best attempt to get there and do it, he was late. And when you're late, a lot of times you'll foul. And a couple of his fouls in that game, no question, were about that. So I think now that that's happened, I think he understands that much better the importance of executing that the right way. And then as a coaching staff, I think matchups and the value of him offensively supersedes at times what we want him to do on defense, and we have to adjust. And that's the hard part in November. If you have an experienced group, you don't find yourself having to adjust to your own team as much because you know them. You've been there before. With this year's team, it almost makes me feel sometimes that we're not as ready, we're not as prepared. But it's more about that we just have to get through some situations to truly recognize what's the best fit, what works the best for this year's group. And then sometimes, you have to live with mistakes, knowing that those mistakes won't be there further down the road. That doesn't help you win the most games that you can now, but I think that we can be a better team in a lot of areas as we enter conference play or even in December, just because we have a high ceiling, tremendous upside. We're playing a lot of new players and players that are returning to our program in bigger roles. And as they get more accustomed to being in that role and more experience, because their intent is right, their talent is good, we're going to lessen our mistakes. Chance Comanche is an example, and this would be along the same lines of the question you asked. He's getting called for really one offensive foul per game, whether it's posting up or setting a screen. That has two things attached to it. One, it's a personal foul on him. It helps the other team get in the bonus. And number two, it's a turnover. We don't get a shot. So with Chance, it's more about him learning what's a foul and what's not a foul, him adjusting, us teaching him to adjust so that that illegal screen and that offensive post-up foul can be limited. That's one more shot per game. And I'm telling you right now, it doesn't sound like not much, but if you shoot 50% from the field, you think about it, you're looking at 1 point per game if we just eliminate one thing. And that's how I look at it right now. We have several things that right away we have to teach our team. They have to execute it. We have to work on it so that we improve from this past weekend to Wednesday, and then Wednesday to Saturday. And that's where really the needle is here. It's about being better at everything that we do. And we can't control the opponent, but what we can control is a number of things that our basketball team needs to be better at, and that's up to me. That's up to our coaching staff to be able to get that through.
Was there anything about that last 2 minutes or three minutes at Butler that you've gone over as far as you were saying maybe the guys weren't as familiar, lack of poise? I mean, would you have gone with a different combination? You don't have many choices, especially with Lowry out. But what did you get in looking at that?
So Butler plays a smaller lineup. If you look at number 45 and number 30 for Butler, they traditionally play the 3 and the 4 with a center. But part of their identity and what they do really well is at some point in each game, and sometimes more than once, they'll move their 4 to the 5 and their 3 to the 4. And then they have 3 other shooters, so they play small. You have to have an answer when they do that. Our answer ahead of time was to go with our smallest group if we weren't in foul trouble. and that would be to play Kobe and Raleigh with Parker and Kadeem, and then play one big. Unfortunately, we didn't have the services of Lowry, which was kind of a part of our dysfunction at the end. But that was a group that, although gave us a great run, if you really look back at the game, part of our comeback happened with that group in. But when we got under the 3-minute mark, when it was just half-court basketball, we were very inefficient. We weren't working together, and that's simply because that group had really never been on the court before offensively in that situation. So I think the gift was they really were a part of a great run. I mean, one of the reasons we had the ball up 4 that deep into the game was because we went small to match up with Butler. But if I had a do-over, we would have substituted and played bigger down the stretch because I think our team would have just been that much more comfortable on offense. And communication, concentration, leadership of the group of 5. We needed to do a better job, both as a coach and a coaching staff, and also that group of just hanging in there. Just because we haven't played well together as a group, or for example, haven't played together as a group of 5, it doesn't mean you have to turn it over or not get a good shot. Kadeem and Parker have to learn through that experience to take over, to be the coach on the floor, to back the ball to half court and recognize, to work kind of with the bench. And, for me, most of the time I err on the side of taking the timeout. If I could have, I would have taken that timeout and just lived with maybe not having a timeout for the rest of the game. You know how that is. If you call that timeout and you don't have one down the stretch, part of what you may be asking is, do you wish you had a timeout? So, but if I had to do over, and I think it would have gave us the best chance to be more prepared, is to call that final timeout. And again, that comes back to learn your team. And I think that as we learn our team early here this season, we have to make sure that we're highly organized, erring on the side of coaching and talking about it, as opposed to kind of letting them play through things. But one thing that I think we feel really good about, if you go through our seasons here, and I know last year we had a lot of, maybe of our 9 losses, we had several that ended on the last play. But I looked at a lot of those games as we fought to be in that position. We didn't blow a lead to be in that position. This last game against Butler is really one of the few that you can point to where you felt like, regardless of how the game was played, to have the ball, timeout, up 4 that late in the game, it's usually been a winner for us. And when it came unglued, I think all of us became a little bit rattled with how it happened. And so we learned from it. We talked about it. And you know what? That situation is going to come up throughout our season, and I hope we'll be that much more ready the next time. We lost to a good team. They're a very good team. They're an experienced team. They don't beat themselves. And really, that's what happened. One of the teams beat themselves where the other wouldn't, and the one that didn't, Butler, beat us.
As steady as Parker's been for you, was there something different you wanted from him in that, or was the odds stacked against him anyway?
I think Parker will settle in. He's been great at taking care of the ball. I mean, his assist to turnover is right around 4-1. Obviously he had a couple of decisions down the stretch that he didn't want to do. We didn't want him to do it, a couple of turnovers, but that's not just on him, trust me. That's on the other 4 guys. That's on his coach for not having his team organized. And I think with Parker, it's, learning how that turnover happened so that the next time he's that much more ready. But, we were 5-0 with Parker having the ball in his hands, and a big reason we were 5-0 before that game was because of his decision-making and his just incredible assist-to-turnover ratio. So he did a lot of good things in that game, and you know what? He's one of the guys I'm talking about, that he's never played this many minutes. He's not been the true starter. And although he's experienced, he's not experienced in that role that you just saw. So things like this sometimes happen.
What do you hope the freshmen take away from the Butler game moving forward?
Lowry, certainly the defense of the importance of concentration and learning the value of fouling versus not fouling. Let me tell you another thing. Butler did an outstanding job of drawing the charge. And a lot of teams are trying to do that to us, and we have to adjust. We have to learn when to drive, when not to stop and pass, There's times where we don't have enough ball movement, and one of our players, especially our younger guys, will try to just take his man. That used to work. It's not going to work in college, but especially against a team like Butler. But I think they had 7 offensive fouls against us in a 40-minute game. So you think about, we had 16 turnovers. 7 of our 16 turnovers were offensive fouls. And, you know, I think they're full speed guarding the ball, full speed, cross-body block is something that is one heck of a thing. You know, if you can run 1,000 miles an hour, lunge at the dribbler, fall down and get a charge, you know, that's something we're going to do on every possession. You know, now that's going to ruin the game of college basketball, but if you look at Lowry's fouls and a number of our turnovers, Butler's ability to get offensive fouls on Arizona was as big of a reason as we lost the game as any other. So A, we're working on it. B, I think we're also now working on the other part, and that is to teach the full speed cross body block. And I think, you know, the last part is just to kind of learn when to drive and when not to drive. And I would say, to answer your question, the value of ball movement on offense before you try to score. You can't just catch the ball on the first, second, third pass against a good team and just take your man. It's not set up for success. And I think in Kobe and Raleigh, they know that now more than ever because of what we just went through.
Was Paulo Cruz already a student here when you first met him? I know a lot
Yes.
he was. Can you talk about when you first met him and how he became a member of the team?
You know, a lot like our situation this year, we ran into, you know, some injuries and players not being able to be with us. And because of that, we needed to add somebody from the student body. And Paulo's a great kid, works hard every day, a very good student.
Did you end up adding another walk-on here, by the way?
We're in the process of potentially doing so. I think we'll announce it if in fact we do.
Because most walk-ons are recruited players and they're preferred walk-ons.
Not true. Not true. In basketball, it's a blend. You know, there's actually an NCAA rule where there's certain things you can't do recruiting to make a player a non-scholarship player on your roster. If you actively recruit that player and then not give him a scholarship, you almost have to give him a scholarship. So there's rules you have to abide by. That's number one. And then number two, that's not true. I think sometimes we find someone who's very, very helpful. You know, Quentin Crawford's a guy who's right now in the NBA with the Orlando Magic as part of their video staff. You know, has been in college basketball since he's left. We added Q as a member of our student body, and he did an outstanding job for us as well.
What's Paulo's role if he's not going to play in practice? Because do they have a bigger role with fewer players who are healthy?
No, he does play in practice.
No, I know. If he's not going to play during the game, like what's his role?
You know, everybody's utilized in practice. If you think about it, just you do the math. You need 5-on-5. You need 10 players to play 5-on-5. You have to be able to play 5-on-5 in practice to make your team better. There's a lot of different things you can do with less than 10, but it's November right now. I mean, if we were talking about early February or late February, you know, down the stretch, it's probably not as important to go active live 5-on-5, but we're here at first few weeks of the season. So because of that, everybody that's a part of our team practices regularly in their quality of play. Their ability to learn our system is important because that's what allows our team to grow.
When you were talking about the offensive fouls before, any of that related to the emphasis they've had the last couple of years for more offensive, you know, and seem to give you a little more leash there on the offensive side, or is it?
A couple years ago, I think it was very clear, you know, hand checking was an emphasis, cleaning up low post play was an emphasis. You know, not having an arm on a live dribbler, and we've really worked hard to teach that. And if you look at our fouls, especially if you charted our offensive fouls in the first 6 games we played, 6 games, if you just take away our offensive fouls, we've probably done as good of a job of not fouling as any team that I've had at Arizona. I'm pretty confident in saying that, and that's really to our team's credit. But yeah, the silo is, you know, you look at it as an offensive player goes straight up and, you know, whether reaching in, especially arm, that's a foul on the defense. But the full speed running cross body block is something that I think is important to teach with the way the game's being played now. Because, you know, I think that any time a guy's dribbling full speed and you could run full speed and lunge at the last second and draw an offensive foul, got to worry about injury there, obviously, on both parties. But I think that's a new part of our game. I've learned that through the first 6 games. And the same thing with posting up. You know, I think there's a real emphasis on the offensive player posting up, making sure that his arms, you know, aren't engaging in the defender's silo. But I think the thing that you have to teach is you have to teach your post player to snap his head back anytime that he's posted up. So it makes it look like the player elbowed him in the face. And if it didn't happen, you're going to get an offensive foul and a turnover. Again, if you think about basketball, if you could ever get a foul on the opponent and a turnover on the same possession, that's one of the biggest plays that you can make. And that's what an offensive foul does. So I think just like the fake head snap on a post-up and a full-speed cross-body block and draw the charge is something that we have to do a better job of incorporating in what we do defensively. And if we do that, I think our defense could be outstanding.
So how do you coach against that body block?
You know, I think teaching your guys the value of moving the ball first before you put the ball on the floor, it's much harder to do that. And, you know, and I think sometimes it's just, you know, hey, look, if you don't go completely around the defender, sometimes you have to stop your momentum. You know, him running full speed and you running full speed, it's an offensive foul. And so I think we have to adjust to that. It's hard for our players because I think when they go to the next level, if they're fortunate enough to do it, you know, it's a completely different game, you know, there in the NBA. But we have to adjust. That's up to us as a coach and a staff. We incorporated it yesterday. And I think that our post defense, our on-ball defense, our off-the-ball defense, drawing offensive fouls and charges and stopping the ball and taking it in the chest and just, you know, just sacrificing, you know, kind of your body to be able to get an offensive foul. I think that's something we're talking a lot about. You know, prior to this year, we tried to really play without using our hands, guard the ball, you know, be physical, but really freedom of movement is the big, I think, term in college basketball, and embracing that as a coach and really trying to teach your guys to not foul. And what do they mean by freedom of movement as a defender? But I think freedom of movement, there's part A to that, but part B is what I talked about, and that is drawing more offensive fouls, you know, snapping your head back, like I said, body blocking, you know, getting into the point where you get outside the restricted area, stopping the ball and taking the charge through your chest. Those are all physical plays. You know, look at it as this. It's like you know, checking in hockey, you know, or in football. You know, the football's on the ground. There's a fumble. How does that feel? I think that basketball has a version of that now, and we have to adjust to that.
It sounds like between the Butler game, Texas Southern being what they are, you have a lot to focus on here. I mean, you might think, well, you got Gonzaga coming up. And
no.
How do you keep them looking ahead? But, I mean, is that a good thing in a weird kind of way that you have that much?
Yeah, and also week 15 in the semester, it's a high pressure point for our players. They have a lot going on. They have final papers, preparation for final exams. In some cases, there's always those classes that finishes earlier than others, and there's a number of our players that will finish maybe one class as the weekend approaches. Sometimes that class can end, you know, as soon as this Saturday. Well, that's a game day for us, so our players are working ahead of time. So I think, you know, the pressure point of eligibility, graduation, finishing the semester in a responsible way, coupled with these 2 games and the aftermath of learning from our experience last week in Las Vegas, no question, this is it may not feel that way to our fans, but these 2 weeks here are sometimes the most stressful 2 weeks of a school year for our players, because it's the most pressure they feel. And, you know, in the spring, their final exams are taken without the pressure of a season. But in Christmas time, they have both going on. So we're working around the clock with these guys to make sure that we're supporting them and that they're doing what they're supposed to, that they're managing their time and their energy and their schedule properly.
Do some of them, generally speaking, do some of them take lighter or heavier loads in the fall so that they can be freer in the winter?
Each one of them is different. Everybody's different. Kadeem Allen is the one player, is a senior, and he's the closest one towards graduation. You know, he feels pressure in a different way because he needs a couple of these grades to go in the books here, and when they do, his next semester will be what you want it to be as a senior, and that is, I think he's down to almost, I think he has to take 2 classes, but he might need only 1 to graduate. But I think that shows about Kadeem Allen's character. You know, he's one of the best leaders that we've had. And it's not just because he's a senior and he's not the most vocal player that we've ever had, but he does it because of his daily habits. And I think each of the players, if you ask them to talk about Kadeem, they would tell you how much he loves to win. Oh, that's the only thing he cares about, and that he does things on a daily basis, leadership-wise, that I really admire. And in his own academic world, he's come a long way since his 10th grade year of high school, and that's really to his credit.
Things on a daily basis like what?
Say that again.
Things on a daily basis. You mentioned he does things on a daily basis that you really admire. Things like what?
You know, he's consistent with his work ethic. He's not moody. It's one of the hardest things to manage as a coach is if you have a moody player. You know, on Monday, they're life of the party. Tuesday, somebody stole their dog. Wednesday, back to being happy. Thursday, you know, it's just, it takes energy away from their teammates. Kadeem is just the same every day. Always has been that way. But as his role has increased, I think that's one of the real keys to our team right now, that we have a steady leader. His effort level, what he embodies off the court, doing things the right way, working hard in the classroom. We've asked him to play 3 positions. He's played injured. You know, nobody feels worse about, he missed 4 free throws in a Butler game. Up until then, he was really shooting the ball well from the line. I think he probably feels worse about that than anybody. You know, you don't have to remind him that, hey, you need to make free throws. He takes responsibility for the good and the bad. And he made the game-winning shot against Michigan State. He looked the same the next day when I saw him as he did after the Butler loss. And so I think that guidance that he provides our group is really essential. And it's nice to see.
Without asking you to look forward necessarily to Saturday, just in general, your thoughts on, I mean, it seems like with Gonzaga, you've had almost a regular annual meetings the way it's gone. But then
we're going to continue to play Gonzaga because they're one of the best programs in college basketball. And to have the opportunity year in, year out to play against them in a true away game, a true home game, neutral, it makes a lot of sense, especially when you consider who they are in the West. I admire their program, their coach, love their team this year. You know, we're not there yet in terms of dealing with them, but whoever plays Gonzaga, they feel the same way as I do. Whether they express it or not, I don't know that, but you have to admire every single thing about their program, on, off the court, their tradition, their quality of player that they're able to maintain year in, year out. And they're very, very well coached. So you play against Gonzaga, you're playing against one of the best programs in the country, playing them in Los Angeles, a city that's really important to our program's history, in the Staples Center, you know, on national television. You know, that's the types of games you want to be in at Arizona. But you know what? They also can run you completely out of the city of L.A. if you're not ready to go because of how great they are. And they're undefeated this year, and but we're not there yet. You know, a big part of why we'll play well in that game on Saturday is how well we play against Texas Southern, how well we prepare for Texas Southern, how our practices go from 2 days ago all the way through Saturday. So we're a work in progress. We're the furthest thing from a great team. But I think our goal is, can we be a better team tomorrow against Texas Southern than we were against Butler? And if that's accomplished, and you know, that's the one thing that this year's team can control.
Is it hard to coach your players against looking towards Gonzaga with Texas Southern coming up?
No, I mean we've been in a one-possession game with Chico State. We've been in a one-possession game against Santa Clara. We've been in a one-possession game against Bakersfield. I think we were in a one-possession game in a red-blue game. We gotta fight like crazy to win, and we're playing a very good team in Texas Southern. Thanks.
Yeah, Ray Ray join you, by the way, in Vegas, right? Is he, everything all right with?
Yeah,
the
Ray had his surgery, and you know, it was successful in that everything was repaired. It was the worst of the 3 knee injuries that he's experienced. It's almost astonishing to say that because everybody saw his injury this time, and that was simply he landed on a layup. But I think, you know, he pretty much lost everything in his knee. You know, everything was torn. And Justin might be able to comment more on that, but it just it's hard to believe. It really is. And but you know, just to see his spirits being that's his 3rd, you know, really extensive knee surgery in really, I guess, what, a 2-year period. Yeah, nobody deserves that, especially at 19 years old. But you know, Ray's doing well academically. He's going to have a great semester. I think you guys know our plan with him, and you know, he's a part of our program forever. But to not acknowledge what that kid has been through is, you know, it's irresponsible on my part if I don't point out the unbelievable adversity that he's been under and how well he's handled it. It's a tribute to his dad, his family, him, and I think it says a lot about Ray's future. When you can overcome things like he has, you can handle virtually anything in life. So he's a part of what we do. I don't know if he's going to travel with us here at the beginning because of the swelling in his knee, and you know, it's important that he finishes up strong academically. But once we get through the first semester, I think he'll be with us from that point on.
Thanks.